Hello students, so today we are going to study the Geoffrey, Chaucer and British literature. He was born between 1340 to 1345. The exact year is still unknown and may differ in various textbooks or YouTube channels for reference. His father was a prosperous wine merchant. In 1357 he was a page in the household of Elizabeth de Burgh, Countess of Ulster, who was wife of Prince Lionel. Here, page refers to a young worker who was a young worker in the household of Elizabeth. Then he was captured by the French during the Brittany expedition of 1359, but was ransomed by the king Edward III. So, who set him free after he was captured by the French was Edward III, and then later the Geoffrey Chaucer was sent to France on a diplomatic mission. He also travelled to Genoa and Florence. Then around 1366, Chaucer married Philippa Roet, a lady-in-waiting in the Queen's household. Philippa's sister, Catherine Sinford, later became the third wife of John of Gaunt, King's fourth son and Chaucer's patron. In 1374, Chaucer was appointed Comptroller of the lucrative London Customs. In 1386, he was elected Member of Parliament for Kent and also served as Justice of Peace. In 1389, he was made the Clerk of the King's Works, overseeing loyal building projects. He held a number of royal posts, serving both Edward III and his successor, Richard II. So Chaucer lived during Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV, and these are their time period. And he was the first poet to be buried in the Westminster Abbey, now known as the Poet's Corner. Arnold called him father of English poetry. In the Legends of Good Women, the 9 legends are the following. And then Dryden, he was also a famous writer and poet who rewrote the Canterbury Tales in modern English. The Canterbury Tales was first written by the Chaucer. Then Chaucer was the first national poet of England. Dryden said about him, "Here is God's plenty, and a rough diamond, and must be polished ere he shines." Boccaccio exercised a deep influence of Chaucer. On diplomatic mission, he was sent to Italy, where he met Petrarch and Boccaccio. He makes a clear reference of Petrarch in his Clerk's Tale. He is called father of English poetry and grandfather of English novel. He is called morning star of song and morning star of Renaissance. Arnaud says about him, Chaucer lacks not only the accent of Dante, but also the high seriousness. He is the first one to use ottava rima in the Book of the Duchess. Ottava rima is the 8th syllable line in couplet rhyming. He first used heroic couplet in the Legends of Good Women. Heroic couplets is 10-syllable line rhyming in couplets. Decasyllabic couplet, that is. So he first used rhyme royal in Troilus and Cressida. Rhyme royal is 10-syllable line arranged in 7-line stanza, A, B, B, C, C. Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida is called novel in verse. So now in the Houses of Fame, Chaucer resemblance closest to Dante's Divine Comedy. W. J. Long called the prologue to the Canterbury Tales as the prologue to modern fiction because of its realism. The general prologue of the Canterbury Tales contains 858 lines. The general plan of Canterbury Tales is taken from Boccaccio Decameron. In Canterbury, the pilgrims could be seen going to Thomas A. Becket in the month of April. He gave pen picture of 21 pilgrims in this work. Had Chaucer written in prose, it is possible his Troilus and Cressida and not Richardson's Pamela would be celebrated as the first English novel by S.D. Neale. Edmund Spenser in his Faerie Queene called Chaucer well of English undefiled. Neville Coghill interpreted Canterbury Tales in 20th century English. Then Albert called Chaucer the earliest of the greatest of the great Bonnets and the morning star of Renaissance. Dryden called the father of English poetry. Then Chaucer found his native tongue a dialect and left it a language by Lewis. Chaucer is the earliest of the great moderns by Matthew Arnold. If Chaucer is the father of English poetry, he is the grandfather of English novel by G.K. Chester. Here is God's Plenty by Dryden. Occleve wrote a famous poem, The Regiment of Princes, on the death of Chaucer. Chaucer and Langland died in the same year, 1400. Chaucer has been criticized for presenting about courts and cultivated classes and neglect the suffering of the poor. Although in Canterbury Tales 120 stories were planned, but only 24 were completed. Chaucer introduced felicity in English. Longest tale of Canterbury Tales is Knight's Tale. Chaucer has been called the Prince of Plagiarists. Chaucer was not in any sense a poet of the people by Hudson. Then the works of his life can be divided into 3 periods. Those are a French period from 1359 to 1372. Then here are some books written by him. Then the second period, Italian period, 1372, from 1372 to 1385. Then here are some books or the tales he has written. Then the third is the English period, 1386, from 1386 to 1400. Then here are some Canterbury Tales discussion, which we will which we will discuss in the next video. So stay tuned.